Hi everyone, Mrs. Kellogg here, and welcome to my Art at Home video series. I don't know if you can hear, but my cat Gilda is going to work with us today. Anyway, I want to tell you what we're going to do today. So, we are going to have fun creating hand designs, and we're going to use our three really important elements of art. So, we are going to use line in our art lesson today. Okay, and our second element of art that we're going to use is shape. We're going to make all fun shapes today. And the last thing we're going to do is we are going to add color, and we're going to use a color pattern. Let's go over to my workspace, and I'm going to show you what materials we'll be using today. Okay, so the first thing you want to make sure you have is either newspaper or a mat, because we're going to use marker today, so you don't want to get it all over the table. So, and we're going to use a paper. So, and it can just be computer paper, that's fine, any kind of paper you have. And then the next thing that I am going to use today is a black Sharpie marker. So, I'm going to get this up close so you can see that I'm going to use a fine tip black marker. If you have other kinds of black markers, you could use that, or you could use a black crayon. And with most of my lessons, you can just use a paper and a pencil. So this is one of those lessons you could use just a paper and a pencil. Okay, now when we go to the color part, you can use colored markers, so that's what I'm going to show you I'm going to use. But if you would like to use crayons, you can use crayons. Or if you have oil pastels, you can use oil pastels. So again, whatever materials you have, you can use. So I am going to let you get your materials together, and then we'll meet back here. Okay, so I will see you soon. Did you get your materials well organized? Great. Okay, so let's get started. So, but the first thing we're going to start with is line. That's our first element of art, and the art tool you're going to use, again, is either a black Sharpie, or again, you can start with a pencil. So we're going to make these long, curvy lines. Okay, so since I said this was a hand design, what you're going to do is make sure you have your mat or newspaper underneath, and you can set your paper in, and you're going across or vertical, up and down. And what you're going to do is you're going to place your hand that you don't write with down. So now I'm going to place this down. I'm going to do this with marker, but again, you don't want to get marker on your hands. Start with pencil, then trace it with the marker. So I'm going to start at the very end of the paper here, and then I'm just going to trace. And I am making this long curvy line. I'm going to go up and over one finger. It's like I'm going over a hill. Now I'm in the valley. I'm going over the hill. And now I'm going down into the valley, up the hill again. And I'm just going to keep going. And you'll probably notice I'm kind of getting relaxed and calm. And that's because I'm using the right side of my brain, which is my creative side of my brain, the art side. And that's where our side where we get all our great creativity and imagination from. Okay, so now I'm going to take my hand away, and I'm finished with that first part. So now my next part is the design part. So I'm going to stop here. This might be a good place to pause your video. And then you're going to trace your hand. And remember, just show you an example here. If you want to do more than one hand, see, you can just have fingers coming in from one side. See how I could turn the paper if I want. So you can do one or more hands. So I'm going to let you trace now, and then we'll come back and start doing the design part. Okay, so now you have your hand traced. So you're ready to do the design part. So this is where line comes in. We're going to use line to create our shapes on our hand. And then that's gonna, you're gonna make a really kind of fun, cool design. So one thing to keep in mind, design is very much like the patterns that you've learned in school, those math patterns, number patterns, color patterns, shape patterns. So good design is when you repeat things. So we're gonna repeat lines and shape. So this is an example of what we're going to do. So you notice we're repeating lines and we're creating shapes. So I'm going to show you how to do that. So I'm going to start with this finger. So we've learned how to make a lot of different lines in our previous videos. So for example, maybe I'm going to do a nice fun rainbow line there. But notice it's going to touch here and it's going to touch here. So that's important. That's going to create our shape. So see, I'm curving that line. So see how I've just made two shapes by having this, touching this line to this line. And then I'm going to come over here. Maybe I'm going to go down this way. So see, it's got to touch one line to another line to make the shape. Okay, so then maybe I'm going to go like this on this line. And now I'm just going to keep connecting the lines to make the shapes. So you can use rainbow lines. See, look, I can make smile lines. And then maybe over here, I'm going to see what happens if I make a more of a curvy or wavy line. See, rainbow line here. So just remember there's no right or wrong. You just want to connect the lines to each side to make that shape. And I'm leaving some big shapes in there because I want to get a lot of color in there. So if I have really wide markers, it's a good idea to keep those shapes pretty big. But if you have thinner markers, maybe you want to put more shapes in there. Okay, maybe this one I'm going to leave a big shape. I don't know, maybe I won't. Now I'm going to see what that looks like. So the fun thing about this, there's no right or wrong. You're going to use line to create all those different shapes to make that design pattern. So see, I'm repeating those rainbow lines. I'm repeating those curvy lines. And now I'm going to curve here. Okay, so now I feel I'm done. So look, I've got my big shapes, and now I feel I'm ready to move on to color. So again, you're going to use line to make these shapes for your design pattern. And just remember, again, as I said before, there's no right or wrong to this. You want to create your own original hand design. So I'm just giving you ideas and showing you how you can do that, but you create it the way you would like. So again, if you want to put more lines in there, you can. Okay, so this would be another good place to pause the video and start making your designs, and then we'll come back and add color. Okay, so now you have your design finished. So now we're going to move on to color. And we're going to think of color, you guessed it, as a color pattern. So if you look at the word color, notice blue, orange, blue, orange, blue. So we've got, which you know that pattern, A-B, A-B pattern. So when artists think of color, they always think in pattern. But they think of it a little bit different because they do think of, for example, blue, orange. But if I were to take my blue color, I'm going to use these oil pastels to show you what I'm talking about. And then I take the orange and I put them next to each other. From previous lessons, you might remember this. When I put those two colors next to each other, what do you really notice? Yes, there are two different colors, but there's something else. What is that? You're right. I've just created a light dark pattern. And when I create those light dark patterns, that's what makes my artwork stand out, and those shapes really stand out. So I'm going to put the orange back and look at what happens if I put an even lighter color next to it. See how that really stands out? So that's what we want to really think about when we're using color, because, for example, I'm just going to show you with this little box right here. If I were to take two colors, say I take this red and I take this brown color, you notice how they're pretty close? So if I start doing this and then I put that brown color next to it, do you notice how it almost looks the same? So that means if I were to have a shape here and another shape here, and I'm making kind of my caterpillar shape, and I do this, and then I do this, you might be able to see those shapes, but not very well. Okay, so if I were to do this, I'll show you. Do the same idea. I'm going to connect these shapes like I'm making a caterpillar. Here's my dark color. And then I'm going to put my light color in there. So now my shapes are really standing out. So that's why artists think of color in that idea of light, dark pattern. They want their shapes to stand out. So I think of this as goodbye shapes, but this is hello shapes, that light next to dark. So think about that when you're choosing your colors. Now in this one, I'm going to choose 3 colors. And I'll just want to show you my example here so you can kind of see what I'm talking about. See how this is lighter and this is darker. So I want to kind of think of that pattern. So see, this is darker, lighter. That's a little darker. And then, you know, I didn't want to put the yellow next to yellow, so I left the white of the paper there. So you can leave the white of the paper. That's fine to do as well. Okay, so now I'm going to get started. And maybe I'm going to start with my pink. That's going to be more of my lighter color. And I'm just going to put that in here. And what I like to do is when I get to this coloring part, at the edges, artists call this edge work. You might have heard me mention that in some other videos, but I try my best to just trace the inside. I kind of went out of that a little bit, but I don't really worry about that. Now, see how I have all the edges covered? I was careful at the edges, and now I can go right in and just get that done. Okay, now I'm going to maybe add another color in there and see what that looks like. Maybe I'm going to go with this really dark color. So again, I'm going to kind of get that edge work. And notice purple's very close to that black. So now I'm going to trace that and come in and get careful there. And then I'm just going to keep going. So like maybe at the tip up here, I'm going to put some of a darker color. Okay, and then, you know, maybe I'll just do pink and purple in the white of the paper. I kind of like that. But if you want to add another color, you can. Now I just want to show you, you'll probably notice that's kind of close. So I'm going to work really hard not to put the orange next to that pink. So now I'm going to put it here and see what happens. Okay, maybe I'm going to leave that part white and I'll put some of this in. Okay, so, and I'm just going to keep going. So I'm going to just keep that idea of the light and dark pattern. So I recommend at least starting with 2 colors, your light and dark, and maybe the white. Or, you know, if you want to add 3 to 4 colors, you can. So again, when you're thinking about color, you want to think of it in a pattern, light next to dark. And if you decide to use just pencil and not color, think of it the same way, that pattern, that idea of light next to dark. So in this case, see how I have, that's my pencil. So that's my shade of the pencil next to the white of the paper. So see how that stands out. And then again, if you do want to add marker, black marker, you can do that. And see, I have that light dark pattern. So think of it this way, you've got light, medium, and dark. Just remember, you don't want to put light shades next to light, medium next to medium, dark next to dark. That would mean that your shapes wouldn't stand out as much. So that is our lesson for today. I hope you enjoyed it. And always remember, when you're creating art, to relax, have lots of fun, and keep creating. So I'll see you in the next video.